Well, good morning. This is Eric Rollins, the Constitutionalist, here on 1550 KXEX, the best talk in town. Today I am joined by somebody running for assembly, young guy, accomplished guy, smart guy, and he's running for District 8. The current assemblyman for District 8 here in California is Jim Patterson, and so we need somebody to step up. I am joined by David Tangipa.
Perfect.
Oh, I actually got the
You got it
pronunciation
right.
right. Well, welcome. So tell me a little bit about your family, your history. It just kind of gives people a baseline of where you're at,
Yeah,
who you
well,
are.
thank you for bringing me on. I'm glad that I could join you. I know we're trying to figure out a time a couple times, but
it happens.
especially with the legislature being out now and trying to watch and pay attention to all those bills come out of Sacramento, I've got some more time. But yeah, thank you for bringing me on again. Again, my name is David Tangipa. I am running for State Assembly District 8. I was actually born here in the Central Valley. I'm from North Highlands, California. My mom's an immigrant from the island of Tonga. My father's a 100% disabled veteran. And I grew up really close to McClellan Air Force Base.
Got it.
When it was an Air Force Base. I mean, if I walked out of my front door, I could see McClellan Air Force Base. And we stayed there because my dad used the VA both there and at Mather. So grew up in North Highlands. I played football at Foothill High School. I had the opportunity to go play football at Fresno State. And so I walked on to Fresno State after about 2 years, earned a scholarship. I'll tell you this, I learned very quickly that I was not an NFL guy. We had 17-year-olds benching 450 pounds, and that was not me. So I really doubled down on education. I got my degree in political science, criminology, a legal studies certificate, and then graduated early, decided to get my master's in business, started working in real estate. And my senior year of football, I was actively selling real estate while playing football, and this was before the NIL deal. So I couldn't even promote myself. I wasn't even allowed to put my name on a card because then there would be some suspicion that somebody would be working with me because of Fresno State football. But now with NIL deals, I mean, you could do anything now. They're on advertisements and all of this other stuff. So I come out here and I'm working in real estate. I've done really well. I've helped over 60 members of my friends and family. And the main reason why I got into real estate was it was the easiest way to break generational poverty through home ownership.
So you're doing home real estate as opposed to commercial.
But I do commercial as well, including farms, some commercial investments. I have my own investment as well. And I got into it because real estate really was the easiest way to break generational poverty. And I've been able to help over 60 of my friends and family, including my parents, myself, my sister, and again, my friends, purchase their first home and break that generational rental cycle because you get no return on rent. I'll tell you that.
Right.
And then from there, wanted to get a little bit more involved. So in 2020, I decided to work for the Fresno County Board of Supervisors. I'd stayed in contact with Fresno County Supervisor Nathan Magsig and started as his field representative 1 week before COVID. 1 week.
Now, there's some good timing.
Yep, some good timing. So I started the first week of March. Really got into, I'll tell you this, got full depth of policy. I mean, I'm glad I had my degree because I understood it really well. But just those nuances. And not only that, you're only 1 week into work. And now there's this national emergency ordinance and everything else coming out. And I'll tell you, nobody knew what to do. And so even if I was asking for advice on, well, what should I do? What should I do? I mean, even the general population and those other workers, I mean, it was very confusing time. But even with that, in 2020 as well, the Creek Fire happens in eastern Fresno County. And I worked on that one. My family lost their house in the Creek Fire. So that was something that was very personal to me. And 2022 was the driest year on record. And 2023 was the wettest year on record. So I've got a lot of policy under me that I've been able to learn a lot of the national and local emergencies. And I'm honored to join you today.
So why did you choose to run?
Realistically, what I've looked at in my time that I've been working in government and the experience that I have, and also the work that I've done with a lot of our local leaders and officials like Jim Patterson. So Jim Patterson's termed out and he's endorsed me to replace him. And the work that I've done with Senator Grove and all of these, I see a lot of the issues that are generally coming out and affecting the local areas are not from our local city electeds, county electeds. It's actually coming out of Sacramento. And then this is a question that I always ask everybody. If we're the fifth largest economy in the world, how do we have rolling blackouts? I mean, that's something that I want everybody to think about. That is a mismanagement from the top. That is scarcity that is created because we are the most abundant state in the world through the numbers of our economy. And yet we have this scarcity of power, scarcity of food resources, scarcity that they want to create on the oil side. I mean, all of these policies that are coming out of Sacramento. And I always tell people, you got to get involved. Policy matters, and it matters to me. It's something that I've been working on diligently for the last few years. And even in college, when I was participating with college political science and different groups there, it was to get involved. And so for me, I want to bring back accountability to Sacramento. I want to bring back accountability to what it means to be a public servant. And I see that. And it's really, that is part of my why, because, and I tell people this, my family can't afford to become a California refugee. So we're going to be California rebels, and we're going to fight back against a lot of these crazy policies that are coming out of California and really bring it back to sanity. And so I'm running to be part of the change, and it only happens if we decide to vote for change in California.
Well, the assembly is, there's 80 members. What is there?
18.
18? Okay. I thought it was 16, but 18?
It's 18.
18.
Yep.
So all the rest of them are Democrats. They're not even independents.
Nope. No, I think there may be one independent. I think there is one independent. I just see there's one marker somewhere, but I do believe 18 of them. Well, I know that there are 18 because 9 of the current assembly members on the GOP side are endorsing my campaign as well. And it's a sad statement, but I still say it, that I have over 50% of the GOP assembly members supporting my campaign. And I'm the only one with active assembly support in this campaign. But it's really just looking at it. If we've gotten that far to where we're at 18, and just to get out of the super minority, we have to get to 27. The easiest way, and the picture that I want to paint for people, why it's so important to get involved with civic engagement, is we don't even have to show up on the assembly floor, and they have
The
quorum.
votes.
They have quorum to get everything. So it's almost like this feeling of just showing up. Hey, good job, you're here. And we'll take your comments. You're making good advisory things, but I talk about, we really need to get back to the educational standpoint, and I think that's the important part about getting involved and educating people on this, because 18, we've got to do something different. We have to.
Well, at this point, if it's, what is that? That means 62, which is well beyond a supermajority,
Mm-hmm.
are your opponents.
Mhm.
Not necessarily all your enemies. A
Mhm.
few of them I would call enemies, but not all of them.
Yeah.
So you're going to have to find allies on that side
Mhm.
to pass any piece of legislation.
Yep.
Do you have anybody that you'd call an ally?
Yeah, I would actually. So there's a new caucus in Sacramento, and I've been talking to them a little bit, and they're called the Mod Caucus, where they like to have members from both sides and just talk about these different things, because they have issues with other members on their own side of things, because they're passing things that are destroying their rural communities, and yet San Francisco, LA, and all these other areas are dominating because, I think, what is it, like 23 members come out of the LA area because it's a 500,000 per district. And they have 6 million just living in the city of LA. That doesn't include LA County.
Right.
So they've got a lot of people there, and they've got a lot of people on the Bay Area that are really dictating policy that affects Northern California, Central California, other outskirt portions, where those individuals, and especially where I look at it, is that there is a lot of rural members on the Democratic Party side that I could really work with well, because they understand at least the problems that are affecting us that are the same. They may have different solutions, but it's about talking to people and getting them to that we have different solutions. There's the same problem, but we're looking at two different trails to get there. And let's use science, data, what's following the Constitution, since we're on the Constitutionalist, following that and getting them. These are people that are actually reasonable to talk to. And that's what I want to find.
I'm encouraged to hear that there are a few, because the only people you hear about in Sacramento are the nut jobs. Anthony Weiner, and there are a list of others that they keep proposing things that essentially take our freedoms.
Exactly.
And then Gavin signs them.
Mm-hmm.
So what is the role of government?
I believe the role of government is actually to embolden the individual and to protect our rights, the rights that are written in the Constitution. And it's written that way to protect people and to give them the value of being an individual person. It's what I love about specifically the First Amendment, the protection of religious freedoms. That there are Sikhs, there are Muslims, there are Christians, there are all these different denominations, Mormons, that the best way and the best solution for handling that is to allow them to practice their religion freely. But yet, we also look at it from a sense of how do we make sure that people follow norms and laws and values? And it's a big area that I think that California's gotten away from.
There's no melting pot.
Well, it's this subjective value, and their subjective laws is what is creating where it's they are okay with putting one morals and values in that is going to be protected by the state government. And I mean, there's certain alphabet individuals that kind of fit that scenario, especially with when it comes to there was a recent law that was passed that bans anybody who are non-gender affirming parents from the adoption process. That you could no
Yes.
longer adopt an individual because of that. That is not the role of government. The role of government is not to say we will police morals and values. The role of government is to embolden the individual and create a society in which we can all freely practice who we are, but we all live under a strict rules and guidelines that we follow.
So to create a civil society.
Civil society, exactly.
Well, so you kind of answered my question, but if we were to compare local to state to federal, they all obviously have different roles.
Mhm.
Where do you want the decisions made?
Oh, at the local level, as close to the local level as possible, because that's what it was intended for. This is a big issue that I see with California. It's why again, I always talk about painting the picture to get people to understand a little bit more. I mean, we see the way that the East Coast is set up. I mean, the East Coast, there are states, I believe it's 4 states on the East Coast right now, that are actually smaller than Fresno County.
Yes, I knew that.
And so, but what that does is it allows government officials to be very close to the individuals because we have, I mean, you get a state like California with almost 40 million people and 58 counties, and Northern California, Central California, Southern California, the coast are very different individuals. You have this issue where it comes to where can we, where do we actually understand in a line? I mean, California, 40 or 38 million people is a larger population than Australia. It's a larger population than Canada. It's a larger population than a lot of countries, but yet it's very big and vast where we really need to dial it back down to the local levels and not centralize government in Sacramento. So if we can empower counties again, that's something that I would like to encourage. If we can empower cities again, like, look, if San Francisco wants to go off the deep end as a city, let them go off the deep end. I mean, that's their fault as a city that they pass certain these policies. It's not to create and get people into Sacramento to create this huge broad brush to make the policies in San Francisco, especially when it comes to certain drug laws, all these other things, and push that on all the other areas. So if we can dial it back to a lot more of the local level, empower the locals to take care of their own communities, that's the best role that I think.
Particularly, and I think this is coming to a head, the legislature seems to be focused on kids and telling school boards that they have no right to do what they believe is best. That there's essentially a top-down method of dealing with school boards because we dared to have a different opinion. I want to point out, if you were to look at a red-blue map for California, LA, and not even all of LA, the dense part of LA, San Francisco, Oakland, which make up the majority of the voters. That I think it's what 60% of the vote is between those two places, something like that.
Oh, LA and the Bay?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And it's a little higher than that if you go down to San Diego. I think it's closer to 75.
Oh, for sure.
But the vast majority of area is red in California, almost everywhere. Now, they're not dense populations, so we don't count as much. But our founding fathers were smart enough to go, wait, we need to find a way around this to make sure those people have representation. And they set up a state, a representative republic that allowed for each state to have 2 senators, no matter what their population was, no matter what the size of the state was. We almost need something like that where our voice isn't heard whatsoever.
Well, it's what I look at, and it's encouraging. Have you been paying attention to Oregon and Idaho?
Yes.
And East Oregon's movement? And the Idaho legislature, before they got done, actually voted to annex in Eastern Oregon.
It's 12 counties, last I heard.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
And
which
with
is
a couple more, I think it's 2 or 3 more scheduled to vote.
mm-hmm. So that is very interesting. Which I think, I mean, that process is going to be interesting to watch. Where I mean, a lot of these East Oregon places are. I mean, it's the same thing that happens here in California, Portland. Some of those coastal areas are really
It's
dominating.
Portland and Eugene.
Mm-hmm. That are dominating all of Oregon from geological landmass. I mean, it is radically different. But you're right. I mean, that's the exact. You're exactly right. Where it comes, these are not population dense areas. I mean, Fresno County, especially in the middle of California, has 1.1 million people. That is a dense population in between a lot of rural counties. I mean, Madera County is almost at 200,000, and then you add, Tuolumne, Mariposa, Mono, Inyo. I think Mono. I mean, there's only like 9,000 people that live there. Inyo County is about 13,000 people. It's really not that many, but it's a huge landmass.
So we didn't define your district, so people kind of have an idea. Mm-hmm. Let's go ahead and do that.
Of course. So the district is a 7-county district. It includes the entire city limits of Clovis, the northern portion of Fresno County. The southern border is just about Shaw. It includes just a little bit more where it goes south is actually the Fig Garden. And Christmas Tree Lane takes that northern portion of Christmas Tree Lane all the way down to about Gettysburg, I believe. Comes back up, wraps around the Fig Garden Loop, doesn't go beyond the Sierra Sky Park, and then it shoots directly north. So if you're north of the 180 on the eastern side and upward, includes all of the Sierras. Then it goes eastern Madera County, none of the city of Madera, none of the city of Chowchilla, all of the county areas around it, this side of the 99, goes all the way up, follows the 41 to the 49, and then takes all of Mariposa, all of Tuolumne, all of Calaveras, all of Mono, and Inyo County. So I believe that's correct.
So it crosses over to the other side of the Sierra?
Crosses over to the other side. So it takes about 5.5 hours to get there by my truck. but that's the way. It's Fresno, Madera, Mariposa, Tuolumne, Calaveras, Inyo, and Mono.
So you've got 4 ways across. You can either fly something, or Sonora Pass through Yosemite through 120, or go south and go through Tehachapi.
That's exactly what I do. So that's how I get to Bishop and those areas. Just go that way. Now that the Sonora Pass is open, there's a couple ways to get to Mono.
Well, that's good.
And I don't fly a plane, and so you can't really take a plane unless.
Well, that would count as a gift. You can get one to Mammoth, but it's expensive.
It's very expensive. I could just drive. And I enjoy that. I mean, I enjoy doing the work, and I enjoy showing up, and I get to really, I was in Mariposa on Tuesday, and I was with them all day in Mariposa, and that's these communities, and it's like a great fun fact that I like to talk about is Mariposa is the only county in all of California that doesn't have a single incorporated city, but Mariposa is also one of the mother counties that a lot of the counties around it were fractured off of, including Fresno County.
Did not know that fact.
Mm-hmm. Yep, Mariposa doesn't have a single incorporated city, the only county in California.
I did know that the original counties had splintered off.
Mm-hmm.
I did know that, but I didn't know the specifics.
Yep. That is the mother county in the mother lode. That is how I remember it, especially when I was speaking to some members in Tuolumne. They're like, oh, yeah, this was a mother lode radio station there. And they're like, this is the mother lode.
What percentage of your potential constituents would be Fresno and Clovis?
So in the 2022 election cycle, about 70%. So it is a Fresno Clovis seat. And I live right here in Clovis. And obviously I played football for Fresno State. That's what most people remember me from. But 70% of the voter base that voted in the 2022 election cycle came out of Fresno Clovis, 10% out of Tuolumne, 10% out of eastern Madera County. And then the remaining 10% was split between Calaveras, Mono, Inyo, and Mariposa.
That's almost sad because while you want to see those people and you want their vote, there's so few votes there that, you got to pick and choose your times.
You do. You do have to pick and choose your time, but it's something that it's where I look at with updates in technology and these different things that we can do to really make sure that these rural communities aren't forgotten. Like I said, my family lost their house in the Creek Fire. I know what they're going through. And I grew up in the foothills. I've had my hunting license since I was 10 years old. And I used to competition shoot before I got into football. So I used to competition shoot and air rifle. So
Cool.
Because I really wanted to go into the Olympics, but I'm Tongan. I'm Polynesian as well. I'll tell you this: it's a whole lot easier to compete for the island of Tonga than it is for the United States, and I could do so because my mother was born there. And that was my goal, was to go, because I can tell you this: there's only one Tongan competition air rifle shooter, and that's me. So there's nobody else. But that was one of the areas that I really wanted to compete, and that's just part of being an athlete.
We're going to go ahead and take a break. This is Eric Rollins, the Constitutionalist, here on 1550 KXCX, the best talk in town. We are also on 102.3 FM. I want to say thank you to all those people that are watching on social media. You know, we're on Truth, we're on Rumble, we're on YouTube, we're on Twitter. You know, if you like this guy, comment. Give me a thumbs up. Maybe share the video. If you don't like this guy, comment. There might be things he needs to work on. One of the great things is that we have the opportunity in free speech to actually still have our own opinion. Make your voice heard. Let's go ahead and come back. This is Eric Rollins, the Constitutionalist, here on 1550 KXCX, the best talk in town. We're also on 102.3 FM, and we're also on social media. Today, I am joined by somebody running for California State Assembly District 8, David Tangipa.
Perfect.
Welcome.
Thank you.
I kind of wanted to shift a little bit and want to talk a little bit about transparency, because you are so involved in city government, or excuse me, county government. You got to see what happened with the Reedley Lab. And I don't necessarily want to spend a lot of time on this, but my biggest issue was I didn't feel like there was the transparency there should be. Having been right in the middle of everything that happened, how would you have acted differently?
See, the Reedley Lab is very interesting because, I mean, these individuals, I tell you this.
And they're criminals.
Oh, yeah, 100%. And that's where it's basically what I've seen, especially being in Fresno County and working with them. With the investigation process, that is the number one thing that we needed to do, was catch these individuals. Because I have seen, and now that the emails are out and they're public now, but these individuals were trying to get the mice back, and they were making these weird requests, and they were saying, well, there's still 1 million, but they were illegally operating in Reedley. They were never supposed to be there, but the owner of that Reedley Lab facility, or the storage house, is an individual that doesn't live here in the United States. And it's all of these different things that are coming out, and I'll tell you this, there's an issue when it comes to the oversight on labs, how labs operate, because I believe that this was a shell company that was working in a sham, and they originally came here to the city of Fresno to do pregnancy test.
And they came from Tulare, I believe.
They came from Tulare, but they were kicked out of the individual who's like the sponsor for it was like, he's on the wanted list in Canada or something like that. And then he was kicked out of Ohio, kicked out of Texas, got all these contracts because there's so lax laws when it comes to testing. But this is the biggest thing that I look at, is the primary goal of what Fresno County wanted to do, working with the individuals, especially with the FBI stating that there is still an active investigation, is we needed to catch these individuals. When the story came out, the part that I could say that's unfortunate, all correspondence with all of them have stopped. All correspondence have stopped. When they were really trying to get these rats back, the mice, because apparently the mice value was worth $1 million. So they were really trying to get them back. There were opportunities that I could just say that were missed on that investigative side. So to me, the most important thing was actually protecting the investigation to catch these individuals, because that's the information that we needed to make sure that you could legislate properly, and where can you make the gaps and fill in the gaps to make sure that something like this doesn't happen again.
Well, amen to that part. Locally, I think a lot of people were very concerned that they felt like when they now looked at the timeline, there's more that could have been disclosed. Now, again, I'm not on the inside. I've only read about this.
So the easy way I like to describe it is, it's like reading the Miranda rights. That's what the county was doing. They were making sure that they were following the steps in order to catch, arrest, and then do what needed to be done to prevent these individuals were trying to come back. And that's where the exposure came back, that they were the only reason why they were at the Relay Lab facility was because they were waiting for their permit to be approved at that lab across the street from the Fresno airport. That is the only reason why they were there. They were simply just waiting to get back into a permitted facility after the fire that happened in 2020. That was it. So then looking into it and trying to capture these mice, get all of that back, there were opportunities there. But I can tell you, after the story really broke and then became, global news, there's zero correspondence. I'll tell you this, they haven't responded to a single email since then.
Well,
So
it's crazy to me that something important like a biolab could be owned by and essentially run by non-U.S. citizens.
Mhm.
There's a huge failure right there.
Yep.
Moving on. So it sounds like most of your district is not actually agriculture. If it is, it's cattle
Yes.
and forestry.
Mhm.
What little forestry they allow. So water's still an issue, but it's not an issue in quite the same way. We're clearly screwing up in how we're managing the Sierras. What would you do different?
See, this is actually, I was recently appointed to Steve Hilton's Golden Together Policy Board on forest management. And in talking about forest management, so I've been working with somebody, his name's John Mount. He's the forester for Southern California Edison. I've known him for a while with Supervisor Magzig. There was a study that I would really encourage a lot of people to really look into, and it's called the Blodgett Forest Project. So that Blodgett Forest Project was a study that was done by UC Berkeley when they tested an area and they were trying to identify what a healthy forest and what a healthy Sierra looks like. And from there, they determined that in between 20 to about 200 trees per acre was a healthy, viable forest. Right now, I believe in the Sierras, our average trees per acre is about 880 trees per acre.
So why?
It's simply because why did that happen was back in the 1970s when they created this huge environmentalist movement that ended a lot of our lumber mills. And as they tapered down and all of this, we got really good at fire mitigation. So we kept putting out fires while we were allowing these ladder fuels to climb that really endangered old growth trees and created these just very weak trees. So
because there's not enough water. There's not enough water and nutrients for a healthy tree that can fight off fire large.
Exactly right. You're exactly right. These old growth trees, they're a lot larger than these medium, or which would have been, because fire was something that was, I tell people this. This is how common fire was back then. The name Fresno means ash tree. That is what people need to realize, is that fire was a portion of our forest management. And for about 60 years, we kept putting out fires that we created this huge embankment that right now California is trying to say this is because of global warming. No, I'm sorry. We have an unnatural forest because we unnaturally put out fire every single year. And then we were not actively thinning and managing the forest properly. And so one of the things that I would do differently, and this is actually what it's something that I've talked to with a lot of legislators about, specifically on the forest management side, is looking at, and it's actually using those that I don't agree with, their policies and their environmental studies, and doing a carbon emissions analysis of what it means to pull in wood from Oregon, from Montana, and from Arizona, all the CO2 emissions from there, and then also identify the CO2 if we were able to capture our own trees right here and properly manage them. And then we're helping, trying to work and get the Auberry Mill site open up. We just approved a $200,000 ARPA funding infrastructure project.
What is ARPA?
So ARPA is the American Rescue Plan that Joe Biden pushed out. So ARPA is the American Rescue Plan. That's just the simple version. So they allow certain infrastructure improvements, and so we did it for the Auberry Mill site for them to reconnect to PG&E so they can get additional power to sustainably produce enough on large scale mill site. And so with that, now we're able to try to get these places back up and rolling, because the only way that we can remove some of the trees from our forest is we need a place to take them. we do not have a place to take them. I mean, even Terabella, which is no longer Terabella now, it's called Sierra Products.
So we've limited logging and we've shut down the mills that would turn it into useful products.
Exactly. And so we just don't have anywhere to put them. We don't have anywhere to put these logs, even if enough of the thinning was to happen. At 880 trees per acre, there's no room for it. That's why the creek fire was so bad, because they would cut down a lot of these trees that died from the tree mortality because of bark beetle. Once it bores around the bark, the tree's dead. I mean, the tree cannot, because it can't get any more of water resources and all of that through its membrane. But this is the best thing that I've realized learning with John Mount, is that you can still harvest a tree within 3 years and use it as building material if you identify that it has died. So that's one of the things that I want to do when I'm in the assembly, is actually pass a bill that, one, identifies a carbon emission study, identifies, and this is actually a new report that just came out too, the number one contributor to carbon and greenhouse emissions are dead and decaying forest. So number one, not the oil companies, not anything else. The creek fire put more carbon in the air in one weekend than every single car in California being on the entire day, every day for a single year.
That's kind of like when Mount Pinatubo went off and put more carbon in the environment.
You're exactly
20 years ago or so.
Exactly right. And that's where I tell people, and I call it political judo. So if they want to talk about the carbon emissions and all of this, then I ask them, I was like, okay, let's do a carbon emission study from Oregon, Montana, and Arizona, where we get most of our material. And then let's do a carbon emission study that if we harvested it here with 880 trees, and then let's do it this way. Let's allocate the resources that we pull here towards affordable housing, because you can't build affordable housing without affordable material. So if we have it here locally where we don't have to truck it in, we're able to create the jobs here. We have the tree density. We have the tree. I'll tell you this, there's enough dead trees out there that, you can make OSB board or different things from pressurized lumber. I mean, let's get smart with it. Let's use our California resources and do it in a proper way. If we want to build affordable housing, if we want to manage the forest properly, I mean, Governor Newsom, he's suing big oil or like oil companies right now because he's blaming them for the wildfires. Well, I'm sorry. It is mismanagement of our forest that is causing these wildfires.
It's an insane world in a lot of ways.
Mm-hmm. Well, and that's where it makes sense. It's like, and the way I describe the forest to a lot of these individuals, because I'm the chair for the Valley Young Republicans, and we do debates and talk to these different groups. I just simply tell them, I was like, it's like planting 1,000 tomatoes in a 1x1 box. That is what our forests are right now. And then you're blaming the sun for not producing enough sunlight, or water not producing enough. You'll never get a tomato if you plant 1,000 tomatoes in a 1x1 box. And you'll never have a healthy forest if you have 880 trees per acre. We need to get to a reasonable area, because they are fighting against them other trees on just the natural resources.
Yeah. I'm going to go ahead and shift gears. Recently with COVID, you started your political career in a way right at the beginning of COVID, and we faced mandates.
Mm-hmm.
I don't see mandates as quite the same as laws.
Nope.
There are consequences if you don't follow a mandate, meaning you might not get the money that the government is dangling to make you jump like the little monkey that they want.
Mm-hmm.
But you don't necessarily have to follow them. I thought it was interesting that the Board of Supervisors decided to essentially, before the COVID mandates were lifted, they lifted them for Fresno County, but they didn't put teeth in them. In other words, there were still plenty of county offices that chose to mask up.
Mm-hmm.
How would you approach that if you had to do it again? You got to see it kind of from the inside. I got to see it from the outside. Was at a lot of Board of Supervisors meetings and got to yell at the supervisors. I feel bad to always be there with a negative message, but I was pissed because, from me, the civil liberties were more important than the health, because I think health is my choice.
Mm-hmm. No, I think you're exactly right. And that's where the position of the Board of Supervisors, was always voluntary compliance. I mean, there was never a single time where a sheriff arrested somebody for not following
Right. And Smith Camp was good.
Oh,
also.
yeah. Lisa Smith Camp was not going to touch that. Sheriff Mims was not going to touch that. And the Board of Supervisors said voluntary compliance. If the state wants to put these mandates and all of these policies in place, I mean, the state, they can send the CHP or whoever they want if that's what they want to do. But, I mean, this is the way I look at it from the Board of Supervisors. I mean, they never, I'll tell you this right now. I mean, voluntary compliance is voluntary compliance. And that's where you just get that message out. Because I walked into wherever I wanted to walk into. And Nathan, it's just it's from a sense of, I don't think people will allow that to happen again.
Let me put it this way. The security guards will be arresting me and pulling me out when I go to a government meeting every time.
Yep.
Because I'm not wearing a mask.
It's where I mean, now.
If I'm sick, I just won't show up.
And it's what I look at, especially with our Supreme Court now and with some of the issues, that emergency ordinance do not circumvent rules and laws. The state of California cannot just by emergency decree create laws. I mean, the Supreme Court weighed in on that now we have case study and different rules and norms because the Supreme Court finally weighed in on some of these areas that they cannot do that. Mandates are not laws. Policies are not laws.
And I was even okay with 2 weeks to slow the spread. But by the time we were done with that 2 weeks and Gavin was saying, this is a chance for a more progressive type of economy, I went, oh, it's on. I was on Blackstone and Shaw. I was never politically active until either the very beginning of April or the very end of March. I just can't remember. But I was at Blackstone and Shaw with a sign. That led me to, I'm in a group. I'm on the Republican Central Committee. I have a radio show and a podcast. I'm on a revival political, both religious and political committee. It's on.
So this is one of the biggest things that we really need to do is we really need to register people. We need to register them. And I'll tell you this, we need more people to help register, especially in the Republican Party, because people don't even know this. There are more Democrats registered in Fresno County than there are Republicans. Even though the Republicans turn out significantly more, Democrats are registering. And I'll tell you why. Because
they ballot harvest.
Well, because members in the state assembly, though, are utilizing that to now take away redistricting from our local jurisdictions. Their goal right now is to centralize the power back under one umbrella in Sacramento. I mean, redistricting is now going to be moved there. Especially, you talked about it earlier, was AB 1078. And that was the adjustments to our local school districts. That now, AB 1078, what that did is centralize all power at your local school board under the California Department of Education, when before the only review that they could have was criminal review, sexual assault, defamation, all of these other things. But now local school boards are glorified advisory elected positions because of AB 1078. That is a goal of some of these members to centralize the power back in Sacramento because they know that they can get what they want by doing that. They're not going to get what they want here in Fresno County because Fresno County would never do that.
Most school districts would not do what they wanted.
But this is a retaliatory position against Chino Hills because of what Chino Hills was trying to do when they were trying to do it in its hidden policies under the guise of compassion. And with this case, if you look up AB 1078, the general headline that you'll see is, Assembly bill passes to prevent book banning at your local school. That is the guise. That's the front. That's the thing. That's the headline. Because most people, and this was
they won't read anything more.
That was a Harvard and Yale study. 70% of people will only read the headline, and if they break into the article, they only read about the first 2 to 3 paragraphs. Maybe that. That's how fast people absorb information. So if you put out on all the headlines AB 1078, and I'm talking to somebody with a different value of mine, and I say, look, this just took away all power from your local school district. And they're like, well, I'm going to look into it. They look into it and they say, it prevents book banning. And then they come back and they argue with me, and it's like, no, I don't support banning books. Why are you a book banner? I'm like, no, that is the guise that they're trying to push it in front of you to make you think that you're at the forefront of fighting against this because who burned books? Hitler did. I don't support book banning because authoritarian figures do that. I mean, it's just like,
Yes, but it's an authoritarian using a hidden
exactly
method.
And that's where I think you're important. what I'm trying to do is very important. What I've been working on with others is highlighting that and pulling the veil away, because that's just the veil.
Yeah.
How do you hide centralizing all of the power at your local school district? Let's put the tag banning books, or preventing book banning is their tag. I mean, that's how we call out their policies. And it's unfortunate, but honestly, in politics, it is a chess game, and they are playing chess significantly better than us here in California. Where I look at Virginia, and why I have hope and change is Virginia elected after
Youngkin?
Glenn Youngkin. And I did training under Glenn Youngkin's chief strategist. So that's where I learned a lot of this as well. But that's the second bluest state in the entire union. And they went from Ralph Northam and who was the other guy? I'm forgetting his name, but he lost. So
McAuliffe, I think.
Yes.
Wasn't it Terry McAuliffe?
Mm-hmm. Terry McAuliffe, exactly.
He's the one that said they're not your kids.
Exactly. They're our kids, is what he's. Well, I'm telling you this: government doesn't own any kids. There is no government kids. There are parents have rights. You embolden the parents, you embolden the individual to take care of theirs, and you create rules and laws in which we all follow. But there is a degradation that they are working on. There is a centralization that they are working on. These are the goals, and I'm calling them out.
We're going to go ahead and take a break. This is Eric Rollins, the Constitutionalist, here on 1550 KXEX, the best talk in town. So for this final segment, Hope Solutions contact information at the end.
Okay, perfect.
All right, let's go ahead and come back. This is Eric Rollins, the Constitutionalist, here on 1550 KXEX, the best talk in town, also on 102.3 FM. And you can find us in various places on social media. Today I'm having a conversation with somebody running for the 8th Assembly District here in California, David Tangipa.
Perfect.
Welcome.
3 times in a row you've got it right.
Maybe I have it now.
Yeah.
So I've kind of controlled the conversation. What would be your top 3 priorities if you were elected?
For me, the number one is public safety. And so it was an honor to work with Senator Grove on SB 14 to make child sex trafficking a strikeable offense in California. We received opposition from the Assembly Public Safety Committee on that one. And I'll tell you this, I helped create the public pressure campaign to highlight that right now in California, child sex trafficking is somehow arguable. That's California crazy, and we have to call that out. So public safety is a huge one for me, because this is something that we've seen since COVID and pre-COVID. I actually go back to 2012 from the Ferguson riots and what happened with Trayvon Brown. That was the beginning catalyst of where we've seen the degradation of public safety, our appreciation for our officers and all of that. So a big portion of what I want to work on is working on public safety and emboldening individuals. There's a huge one that I want to work on and lead is actually the repeal of Prop 47. The repeal of Prop 47 hasn't created one safer neighborhood or cleaner schools. It is the worst piece of legislation that we have enacted probably in the history of California. I even say outside. Well, that's the one that
it'd be definitely top 5 for me.
Exactly. And so it's one of the ones that was part of the change that we got to see California go through this extreme rapid decline. Smash and grabs. It's the one that emboldens smash and grabs and really handcuffs DAs and all of this. So public safety is number one for me. Force management obviously is a huge one for me, especially with my family and its past history when it comes to
and the district.
And the district is extreme, and my family's in the district. And so they're in Auberry, Toll House area. And not only that, in 2018, my father's property was involved in the car fire up in Redding. So very familiar with that. In 2019, my uncle lost his property in the Kincaid fire out in Healdsburg. So it's like that is a huge, that is personal to me. And all of these are mismanagement, and it really makes me angry when somebody is saying it's like, climate change or whatever, because that's proper forest management. And so there are different things. You can make affordable material, or you can only build affordable housing with affordable material using California resources for Californians in building homes. We want to reduce the housing issues that we have here. You can only do that by increasing the supply, lowering the demand, and then you balance out the prices. The best way to do it. That's how business works.
No, I thought we were supposed to just listen to King Gavin, and he was supposed to tell his loyal subjects to do whatever we were told.
Yeah, he'll just call it affordable housing, even though it's $400,000 a door to build an apartment complex and everything else. And so, yeah, sure.
Or some of his homeless projects were $1 million per unit.
Yep. You're exactly right. Especially in LA County,
In LA County, yeah.
they were at $1 million per unit. Imagine that, you know. But so let's free up some of these areas, and then a huge one that I want to work on is local control, fighting back against policies like AB 1078. Other ones like there's a redistricting bill right now that we talked about a little bit earlier that is forcing all local jurisdictions to then implement the same portion as the state independent Citizens Review Commission. I'll tell you this: I would love to recruit you for the 2030 redistricting because we didn't even have a single person on the redistricting commission from LA to Stockton. Not a single. Well, from LA County.
It's possible. Let's say that.
I'll tell you this.
I'm trying to get on the GPAC committee for Clovis as it sits.
Well, I would love to get you on the state one because we need more people to actually get to really participate in civic engagement. And this is something that I call out to a lot of individuals. Just get back and create communities again through civic engagement. I mean,
and it doesn't have to be elected. There are all kinds of appointed positions. If you know a local politician, I bet you there's some board
that they
or
could
commission that they could participate in.
They can appoint you to. We do that a lot. I always take the boards and commissions with me. So those are the big three for me: public safety, forest management, local control, and there's another one that I do work with when it comes to water policy and water infrastructure. And this is actually lowering our cost of living because what most people don't know, and this is part of my message campaign, is that large-scale hydroelectrical facilities like the Big Helms Project, Don Pedro, they're not considered in our energies portfolio. They are not considered green and renewable energy, even though it is gravity-fed hydroelectrical. Did you know that?
Yes, I sadly did, but you can still see the confusion on my face because that's insane.
It's absolutely insane. And so this is one of the arguments, and again, I call it my political judo take, and it's saying, it's like, hey, we can increase the amount of energy we're producing right here because it goes back to that opening statement when you asked me why. The fifth largest economy in the world, and yet we have rolling blackouts, but it's man-made blackouts because we don't even include large-scale hydroelectrical facilities in the energies portfolio that was created in 2002 as part of our renewable energies. So they limit the production since they're not included. With a simple sentence that the Assembly can put in or the Senate can put in, we can increase our energy production immediately without building a single storage, without adding a single carbon emission, without doing anything but writing in the legislation. That's it. Just adding a sentence because the only ones that are considered right now are wind, solar, and like hydroelectrical. Nuclear is not even considered. The Diablo Canyon is not even considered green and renewable.
Well, but it's what is it, first or is it second generation nuclear?
Oh, I believe it's first.
Okay, so the fact that we're not willing to embrace third and fourth generation, which are safer, smaller, work in Western Europe quite a lot.
Work in Western Europe. I tell people this: every single one of our aircraft carriers, there's thousands of people who sleep. My brother's in the Navy, or was in the Navy. He's out now, and people sleep over nuclear reactors now, and yet our entire military in a lot of areas sleep near nuclear reactors. Whether if they're in the Navy and they're on ships and different ones. And yet we have an issue with just using the innovation that we want right now. Why? Why are we on this scarcity to create? These are man-made high cost of living prices when it comes to our energy production. These are man-made. Why are dams that are currently in place, like Helms, Don Pedro, and these other areas? And this is where it's continuing that, but I'm doing it in a new way, actually highlighting it. And so Jim Patterson tried it in 2012. Adam Gray, who's a Democrat, tried it in 2018, and Ana Caballero tried to do a one-off with Don Pedro. Let's get back to having some common sense in California. There are no losses to writing a simple sentence increasing our energy production through hydroelectrical.
Okay, so we're down to about a minute. Mm-hmm. I want you to give your campaign, ways to contact you, and why you're hopeful. And then we're going to do that one more time after the break.
Of course. And so the easiest way to reach me, you can reach me direct at 559-425-6520. That goes straight to me. You can shoot a text to that. And that number again is 559-425-6520. And you can also follow me on all of my social media. Everything is David J. Tangipa. The easiest way to spell it is Tang IPA. I've got a local brewer that actually heard about that and made a campaign beer. And so that's his. Cool. It was his idea, but that's Burning Sun Brewery, and so they're out here based out of Clovis. And so he made a Tang IPA. So it's the easiest way to spell it. That's all of my social media. And you could always go to my website at David Tangipa, easiest way to spell it, TangIPA, for assembly.com. Best number, again, 559-425-6520.
Well, I thank you for spending this time with me.
I enjoyed this. I loved it.
No, this was a good conversation. Okay, I think that's a wrap. This is Eric Rollins, the Constitutionalist, here on 1550 KXEX, the best talk in town. Go ahead and, for the social media audience, go ahead and give that information one more time. Just contact information, website.
Yep, the easiest
social media.
My website is davidtangipa4assembly.com. You can find all of my social media, David Tangipa for Assembly or David J. Tangipa, all of that. Pretty easy. And the best number to reach me is at 559-425-6520.
Well, David, I thank you for spending this time, and I thank you for being willing to step up. I don't know that we need to always get rid of the old guys, but we definitely need a different approach.
Yep.
Because what's happening in California is not working.
Exactly. And that we've got to, and that's just what I say. You know, if we're ready to try something different, we're ready to do different things. And I bring my approach is modernizing. Modernizing the message is where I think, because if we're at 18 in the Assembly and 8 in the Senate, I mean, we've got to try something different.
Right.
When will we do something different? And that's what I'm working towards.
Well, I thank you for this time, sir.
Thank you.